The room went silent when my mother raised her glass and said, "To my daughter, the biggest disappointment of my life." For a moment, I thought I had heard her wrong. It was Mom's 60th birthday. Nearly 40 people were gathered inside an elegant restaurant decorated with golden balloons, flowers, and a huge birthday cake. Everyone had come to celebrate her. And somehow, I had become the entertainment. My mother smiled as she looked directly at me. "You know," she continued, "when children grow up, you hope they become successful." A few people laughed awkwardly. I lowered my eyes. My younger brother, Jason, sat across the table. He suddenly became very interested in his phone. Mom continued. "Unfortunately, some children never quite get there." Then she pointed toward me. "My daughter has always struggled to find her place in life." My face burned. Someone at the table shifted uncomfortably. Then Mom raised her glass again. "Still, we love our failures too." Everyone laughed. Everyone except me. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. Instead, I looked down at the small envelope in my hands. Because my mother had no idea what was inside. And before that night ended, everyone in that room would know the truth. You see, growing up, I had learned that nothing I did was ever enough for my mother. Good grades? She asked why they weren't perfect. A new job? She asked why it wasn't better. My own apartment? She asked why I hadn't bought a house. And when I started a small business, she laughed. "That's cute," she said. Meanwhile, Jason could do almost anything and become the family hero. When he bought a car, Mom celebrated. When he got promoted, she called every relative. When he needed money for his business, she gave it to him without hesitation. But when I needed help, she told me to learn independence. So I did. I stopped asking. I worked harder. For years, I struggled quietly. I answered emails at midnight. I worked weekends. I lost clients. I made mistakes. But eventually, my business started making real money. It wasn't an empire. But it was mine. Then, 3 weeks before Mom's birthday, she called me. Her voice sounded unusually sweet. "Sweetheart," she said, "come over. We need to discuss something important." I had no idea that conversation would change everything. Because Mom wasn't going to ask me for help. She was going to ask me to give up everything I had built. When I arrived at Mom's house, Jason was already sitting in the living room. Mom looked at both of us. Then she said something I never expected. She wanted me to give my business to Jason. Not sell it. Not partner with him. Give it to him. "His business isn't doing well," Mom explained. "He needs a fresh start." I stared at her. "And you think I should give him mine?" She frowned. "You don't need it as much as he does." That sentence hurt more than I wanted to admit. I looked at Jason. He wouldn't even meet my eyes. I slowly shook my head. "No." Mom's expression immediately changed. "You're being selfish. I'm not giving away something I spent years building." She stood up. "Jason is your brother. And I'm your daughter." The room went silent. Mom looked away. That was when I realized something. She didn't want to help Jason. She wanted me to sacrifice myself for him. When I refused, Mom stopped speaking to me. Then she started speaking about me. Relatives began calling. One aunt asked if I was having financial problems. Another told me I should be more supportive of Jason. I couldn't believe what was happening. My own mother had turned my refusal into a family scandal. Then my aunt sent me a message. "Your mother told everyone you're struggling financially. Is that true?" I stared at the screen. Struggling? I opened my business records. I looked at my accounts. And suddenly, I realized how ridiculous the whole situation was. I wasn't a failure. I had simply stopped trying to impress people who would never be impressed. That night, I went to my office and opened a locked drawer. Inside was an envelope. The same envelope I eventually brought to Mom's birthday. Inside were financial records, contracts, receipts, and one old letter. The letter was from my grandfather. He had always believed in me. Before he died, he left me a small trust to help me build an independent future. There was one important condition. I couldn't hand control of it to anyone else. Not even family. I had used that money carefully. I built my business. I grew it. And eventually, I became financially independent. I had never told Mom. Not because I wanted to hide my success. But because I wanted to know something. Would she ever be proud of me without knowing how much money I had? Apparently, I was about to find out. At Mom's birthday party, I listened as she called me a disappointment. I listened as she praised Jason. Then she raised her glass. To family. Everyone lifted their glasses. I didn't. Mom noticed. "What's wrong?" she asked. I stood slowly. "Nothing." She smiled. "Then perhaps you'd like to say a few words." I reached for the envelope. "Actually, Mom." I looked around the room. "I brought something for you." Her smile disappeared. And she had no idea what was coming next. Mom stared at the envelope. "A birthday card?" "No." I walked toward her and placed it on the table. "Something you should have known before calling me a failure." Her smile vanished. Jason suddenly sat up straight. Mom opened the envelope. She pulled out the first document. Then another. Her eyes moved across the pages. Slowly, her expression changed. "What is this?" she whispered. I didn't answer. My aunt leaned forward. Mom looked at a financial statement showing the value of the business I had supposedly built from nothing. Someone gasped. Jason stared at the document. Mom opened another page. Then another. Finally, she found my grandfather's letter. Her hand started trembling. "You had this?" I nodded. "4 years. Why didn't you tell me?" I almost laughed. "Because you never asked how I was doing." Mom stared at me. "You asked how much money I was making. You asked why I wasn't like Jason. You asked why I didn't have what everyone else had." I pointed toward the documents. "But you never asked how hard I worked to get here." The room became completely silent. Mom looked at the letter. Then she suddenly became angry. "You hid this from me." "No," I said calmly. "I protected it." That sentence silenced her. Then I pulled one final document from the envelope. Jason immediately looked nervous. I turned toward him. "You didn't need my business." He stood. "What are you talking about?" "You wanted my business because Mom promised you that if I gave up, she'd help you take over what I built." Jason's face changed. "That's not true." I placed the document on the table. It was a record showing that Mom had already promised Jason part of the family property. My aunt gasped. "You promised him the house?" Mom turned toward her. "That isn't your business." But the room had already changed. Everyone was looking at Mom differently. Then I pulled out another page. "This is why you wanted my business." Jason stared at it. It was a message. A message he had accidentally sent me 2 weeks earlier. He thought he was sending it to Mom. The message said that once I gave up, he would take over everything. And Mom would make sure I didn't have a choice. Jason's face went pale. My mother stared at him. For the first time that night, neither of them had anything to say. Mom finally looked at me. "What do you want?" I had waited years to hear those words. But strangely, I didn't want money. I didn't want the house. I didn't want Jason's business. I simply looked at her. "Nothing." Mom looked confused. "Then why did you bring this?" I held the envelope tightly. Because you spent years telling everyone I was a failure. I looked around the room. And tonight, I wanted everyone to know the truth. Then I said the one thing Mom never expected. I don't need you to be proud of me anymore. Mom stared at me. For the first time in my life, she looked completely speechless. I could have destroyed her reputation that night. I could have told everyone every cruel thing she had ever said to me. I could have embarrassed her the way she had embarrassed me. But I didn't. Because I finally understood something. Revenge didn't have to mean hurting someone back. Sometimes revenge was simply refusing to let them control you anymore. Mom looked down. What do you want me to do? I answered quietly. Stop telling people I'm a failure. She looked at me. I've spent most of my life trying to prove I'm worthy to you. My voice shook. But I'm done. Jason suddenly spoke. This is ridiculous. I turned toward him. No, Jason. What's ridiculous is that you thought you deserved something you never built. He said nothing. I picked up the envelope. Then I looked at Mom one final time. I don't want your money. I don't want the house. I don't want an apology because you were exposed. I walked toward the door. Behind me, Mom said. Wait. I stopped. Her voice was different now. Not angry. Not proud. Just tired. I didn't know, she whispered. I turned around. That was the problem, Mom. Then I walked out. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls. Most were from relatives. Some apologized. Others told me they had never believed Mom's stories about me. Then I saw a message from Mom. It was only 6 words. I was wrong about you. I'm sorry. I stared at the message for a long time. I didn't immediately forgive her. Because an apology doesn't erase years of pain. But I also didn't hate her. I didn't need to. I went to my office that morning. I looked around at everything I had built. The little business Mom had called cute. The business she had said wasn't a real future. The business I had built through years of hard work. And for the first time, I wasn't proud because of the money. I was proud because I had finally stopped needing someone else to validate me. Months later, Mom and I slowly began talking again. Things weren't perfect. They couldn't be. But she stopped comparing me to Jason. And I stopped comparing myself to the daughter she wanted me to become. That birthday taught me something I will never forget. Sometimes the strongest revenge isn't destroying the person who hurt you. It's becoming so confident in yourself that their opinion no longer controls your life. My mother called me a failure in front of 40 people. But that night, I didn't lose my dignity. I found it. And that envelope wasn't proof that I was rich. It wasn't proof that I was better than my brother. It was proof that while everyone else was deciding what my life was worth, I had already decided for myself. So if someone constantly makes you feel like you're not enough, remember this. You don't have to spend your life proving your worth to someone who refuses to see it. Build quietly. Keep going. And one day, you may not need an envelope at all. Because your life will become the proof. And when that day comes, you won't need revenge. You'll simply walk away. And let them realize what they lost.